Alright, everybody, hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to Spirit and Truth, Episode 8, Ordo, Ab, Chao, Pike, Order out of Chaos. Hope everybody's doing well. Free to captives, are you there, brother?
Check, check, I am here. Hello, hello, everybody.
Good, I'm glad to have you here. This is a very important episode. So why don't we begin? Albert Pike would likely applaud the current events unfolding in our world today. He would likely revel that his statue was torn down and set ablaze on the evening before the summer solstice by the spirit of revolution. Remember, though life is short, thought and the influences of what we do or say are immortal, and that no calculus has yet pretended to ascertain the law of proportion between cause and effect. The hammer of an English blacksmith, smiting down an insolent official, led to a rebellion which came near being a revolution. The word well spoken, the deed fitly done, even by the feeblest or humblest, cannot help but have their effect, more or less. The effect is inevitable and eternal. The echoes of the greatest deeds may die away like the echoes of a cry among the cliffs, and what has been done seemed to the human judgment to have been without result. The unconsidered act of the poorest of men may fire the train that leads to the subterranean mine, and an empire be rent by the explosion. From the political point of view, there is but a single principle. The sovereignty over man over himself, the sovereignty of oneself over oneself, is called liberty. Chapter 2, The Fellow Craft, page 43 and 44. So, yeah, sounds like to me, Pike was a big fan of revolutions and a big fan of a person having sovereignty over oneself. You know, the internal driver, the gnosis, the pure, and put pure in quotation marks, self-will, that one can overcome God's will. And I think that's definitely what, many people believe, the spirit of revolution that is going on currently today, wouldn't you say, Free to Captives?
Yeah, and then, like he says, the sovereignty of man over himself. So you're your own God, and, it says it right there.
Yes, very much so.
Yikes. And it says the sovereignty of oneself over oneself is called liberty. But it's like I keep thinking of this, like their liberty is their bondage. What they think is freeing them is actually binding them. So often.
Yes, I could definitely see that. You're right about that. Free to Captives. And we're gonna, we'll go through Pike. We're gonna see a lot of doublespeak. We're gonna see a lot of occult language, hidden meanings, and definitely, I'm not a fan of Albert Pike. I don't think anybody who's listening in our chat, I don't think any of them are. But we got to go through his life. It's very important. So here's another quote of his from Morals and Dogma. The freest people, like the freest man, is always in danger of relapsing into servitude. Wars are almost always fatal to republics. They create tyrants and consolidate their power. They spring for the most part from evil councils. When the small and the base are entrusted with power, legislation and administration become two parallel series of errors and blunders, ending in war, calamity, and the necessity for a tyrant. When the nation feels its feet sliding backward as if it walked on the ice, the time has come for a supreme effort. The magnificent tyrants of the past are but the types of those of the future. Men and nations will always sell themselves into slavery to gratify their passions and obtain revenge. The tyrant's plea, necessity, is always available, and the tyrant, once in power, the necessity of providing for his own safety makes him savage. Religion is a power, and he must control that. Independent, its sanctuaries must rebel. Then it becomes unlawful for the people to worship God in their own way, and the old spiritual despotisms revive. Sounds like to me that Albert Pike greatly detests the renowned kings of old, even though some of them had, deep flaws, but some of them were righteous men. And it seems like he's got a problem with the Catholic Church. You and I think the Catholic Church has multitude of flaws, But man, does Albert Pike really despise the Catholic Church?
And like Blavatsky as well. Apparently, like Theosophy and Jesuitism. Like Blavatsky speaks about Jesuitism
Yes.
very often.
Yes, and they both hate them very much. I have
Like
Michael Joseph on Tuesday to discuss all this from his Catholic perspective.
It's like a false dialectic that they have there, because at the top of that, who's running that, right? Obviously, satanic forces, we know. So it's like they think, like, imagine being one of those groups, right? You think you know it all, but like you're just being played off against the other side. It's almost always like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, and the part where, it's not that everything Albert Pike says in Morals and Dogma is 100% incorrect. Like you and I would agree, for the most part, from evil councils, they consolidate their power, and when the small and the base are entrusted with power, problems
Right.
come from that. When you have secret groups and secret cabals, there are multitude of issues. However, Albert Pike is within that secret cabal, and he's just upset, yelling at the Catholics and the Catholic Church, but instead saying that Masonry can do it better.
Exactly. They want to set up their own system, which is called the New World Order, actually.
Yes, and they want to go against the Old World Order, which is Christendom, at least within our modern times, within AD. Yes, there are flaws with the Catholic Church and the Jesuits, do not get me wrong, but it's like, okay, well, at least the Catholics, there's different stages of Christ's church where it was less corrupted, in my opinion, and at least...
Not all Catholics are mystics, or some are just, Italian Irish Christians.
Let me ask you a question, Rich. Would you rather have a population of people who are Catholic who go to the Catholic Church, or would you rather have a population of Freemasons? Which one?
Well, right. That's a good point, right?
So, all right. So here's them toppling down the statue. So yeah, they set ablaze. Not only did they take it down, they set it ablaze. Free the captives.
Now I like this just for the fact of idolatry and who he is and what he represents. But they've gone crazy with the statues. I mean, come on, people, right? Can't take down all the statues. Some statues are okay. Like I was thinking, I sent you the link to William Morgan, right?
Yeah.
Kind of a relative subject. He was killed by the Freemasons, so they have a statue commemorating him. So, like, I'd keep that one. Like, please don't destroy the William Morgan statue, guys. But this one, yes, I kind of applaud this one, especially because of who Pike is and what the forces Pike represents. I make it's idolatrous at that level for sure.
Yeah, I would argue that I put up a poll on my channel. We've read the documents, and I was like, because myself I'm conflicted. Like, I think you should leave it up, but at the same time, I'm no fan of Albert Pike in the slightest bit. Like, he's a horrible human being, in my opinion. So I can kind of see both sides. I can see tearing it down, and I can see leaving it up as a reminder. And I can see people that argue that it's idolatry, and you wouldn't want idolatry of Albert Pike, you know. So it's just it's
And it's this. I make this point, like anyone worth his salt wouldn't want a statue of themselves. Right?
And we'll get to what Pike said about the
enough
statue. We'll get to what Pike said about the statue. So you'll find that interesting.
Okay.
But I mean, you think anybody worth their salt wouldn't want to put a statue up of themselves, right?
Right, like to be humble enough to be like, glory to God, maybe, no, for giving you those gifts that made you so, that's how any Christian in their right mind or anybody thinking straight, basically, you're supposed to give glory. If you've got gifts in this world, where'd you get the gifts, really? Ultimately, you got them from God. You should give glory to God and not make it. It's idolatry. We had problems with statues before in history, and the Bible talks about it.
So you have from Geoff Bennett. We'll see if this ends up become true or not, because the White House has not confirmed this yet. Two sources tell NBC News that President Trump personally called Interior Secretary Bernhardt and asked the Park Service to put up the statue of General Albert Pike, Washington, D.C.'s only outdoor Confederate statue, where protesters tore down and set on fire the night of Juneteenth. The White House did not provide an on-the-record comment, but an Interior Department spokesman tells me the Secretary has made his position quite clear when it comes to lawlessness, violence against the police, and destruction of public property. So, yeah, instead of putting up, I don't know, the George Washington, which I'm no fan of the luminous George Washington either, but instead of, putting, I can understand, the father of our country, per se, putting his statue back up. No, the first statue we're going to put up, get right on putting that Albert Pike statue back up. Get right on that. Get right on that. So...
really showing the true colors. If you're, well, that pretty much says it all right there, yeah. All the statues.
Yeah, of all the ones, I gotta get right on putting that Albert Pike one back up there. Go ahead, get right on put that one up.
Right beside the Satan statue, the Baphomet statue. America, no.
So... Albert Pike was born in Boston, Massachusetts on December 29th, 1809. He was one of 6 children of Benjamin Pike, a cobbler, and Sarah Andrews. Pike was raised in a Christian home and attended an Episcopal church. He attended Massachusetts public schools in his youth. He received an education that provided him with a background in classical and contemporary literature in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. He passed the examination required for entry into Harvard when he was 16, but wasn't able to pay the tuition. However, he began to teach, working at schools in Newburyport and nearby Gloucester and Fairhaven. He began to write poetry as a young man, where he continued to do for the rest of his life. When he was 23, he published his first poem, Hymns to the Gods. And I put a picture of his book. This is a later reprintation with more of his poems. Hymns to the Gods and other poems, and Hymns to the Gods, pretty much they're all various poems dictated to various Greek and Roman god and goddesses. So this was before Freemasonry, before he became a Freemason.
Reminds me of Jack Parsons. Apparently he did an invocation to Pan every time he launched a rocket.
Yeah, I can see that. He's another... We need to do an episode on Parsons, too, as well, eventually. So, Pike... He's not a good guy, is he?
Weird guys.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll get to some of Pike's weirdness later. Pike later left Massachusetts west for Santa Fe, in what was then Mexico, in 1831. From Santa Fe, he joined an expedition into the lands around the headwaters of the Arkansas and Red Rivers. En route, his horse broke and ran, forcing Pike to walk the remaining 500 miles to Taos. After this, he joined a trapping expedition to the Llano Estacado in New Mexico and Texas. Trapping was minimal, and after traveling about 1,300 miles, half of it on foot, he finally arrived at Fort Smith, Arkansas. He taught there in rural schools for a short time, but his literary skills got him involved in Arkansas politics. In 1833, he published in local newspapers in support of Robert Crittenden's candidacy for territorial delegate to Congress. The anonymous letter signed Casca after one of the Roman politicians who assassinated Julius Caesar. So you got that rebellious spirit. Were considered very persuasive and secured him a statewide reputation as a writer. They also attracted the attention of Charles Bertrand, owner of the Whig Party's Arkansas Advocate. He invited Pike to Little Rock, Pulaski County, to work as paper's editor, which Pike would accept the job. Anything you're going to mention before? Hold on. The doc in the chat says George Washington was a Mason. Was he satanic? Well, he was an Illuminist, and he wasn't a Christian. A majority of the founding fathers were not. So, yeah. About the only one I think that may have been Christian was Patrick Henry. And I think he was, from all the research that I've done. Go ahead. Recap this. I'm sorry.
Check out my, one of my latest videos was the apotheosis video. And it has a quick clip of the apotheosis of George Washington, I believe in it. But it kind of explains how the concept of man as God is embedded within Freemasonry. Right?
Yes. And my grandmother's my grandmother's stepfather was a Mason, but he left Masonry. And my grandmother was an Order of an Eastern. My great grandmother was an Order of Eastern Star, and they left when they found out that Masonry in the Parkton, North Carolina area was not Christian, and Masons would not allow him to sell land that he owned for a Food Lion grocery store. That he wanted to put there because they controlled a majority of the upper echelon of Parkton, which is a very, very small town south of me, about 10 minutes to the south of me. And they threatened him. They showed up one day with some torches, and some shots were allegedly fired. The upper echelon of the town after he left Masonry. So I understand that there are, I'm not saying it's a lower level grand conspiracy of Masonry, that you have your second or third degree Mason that meets at the lodge. They're part of some grand Masonic conspiracy at the top. But I will say that I do believe, through own experiences that I've seen in my own family, Masonry and the upper echelon levels is antithesis to Christianity, and I would say even on the lower levels, because the lower levels don't know what the upper levels do. So if you're a Christian and a Mason, they do conflict, and maybe you should give up Masonry. I would actually implore you to give up Masonry. But go ahead.
Yes, please do. And even at the lower levels, see, people don't know their doctrine. They don't know their Christian doctrine, so they don't know that God says to swear no oath, to make your yes mean yes, your no mean no. Anything other than that is the work of the evil one, right? So like every idle word you say, here's the problem is that they kind of preach that they're moral and all this, right? But if you're swearing oaths and God says not to swear an oath, for instance, right? You're a rebel against God when He says not to do something, or like to bow before another god, or to bow before a man and not God, right? That kind of stuff. You're making a choice to obey or disobey God, but you need to know the doctrine. People don't know we're losing our foundation of Christian doctrine, so it's like easier for people to get seduced away from this, seduced into Freemason. My family was, or my great grandfather was the Loyal Orange Lodge, Royal Black Preceptory. So. I know about how, it works, but yeah, like on a spiritual level, there's definitely it is a great conspiracy, right? Because there's spirits behind this stuff.
And whether you
how that works,
and
right?
whether you people like it or not, Christendom, the Catholic Church was very much against Freemasonry. The Freemasons and the Catholics hated each other. Each other.
Who was the Knights Templar were an order of the Catholic Church until they fell out of favor, weren't they not? And you know what I mean? Like they established the Templars basically. So it's like, you know, like at a certain level, we have this discussion already, right? Like at a certain level, they kind of all meshes with the like chivalry almost, or like the knighthoods, is what I was trying to get at.
And the doc also says you swear an oath when you join the military. Yeah, that would be to your country and to the Constitution. And I can see that aspect, but you don't swear an oath in court to testify. You swear that you are telling the truth. That is different. You don't swear an oath to the court. You say, I swear that I tell the truth. That is different.
I almost disagree with swearing on a Bible, period. It says to swear
yeah, I don't think you should swear on the Bible.
Not
but
at all, it says. It says, above all, swear not at all. Like, swear no oath. They're making like a point. God's making a point there that, like, do not swear at all. Make your yes mean yes, your no mean no.
Yes.
Right? So here's the problem. Like, Freemasonry. Man, there's so many fundamental problems with Freemasonry as far as like doctrinally goes, because you when you first knock on that door, and it says who's there at the door, right? They say one who's in darkness is seeking light. Okay, so you're admitting you're in darkness. So if you, as a Christian, say you walk, it says in the Bible, you walk as if we say we walk in darkness, we're denying Christ, right? So like it's very important what words we use as far as oaths and, you know, swearing oaths, right? Like, and then, you know, there all the rituals and the Hiram Abiff, the raising with the lion's paw, and it's all a counterfeit of the raising of Christ. You know, Christ raises us from the dead, but they have this Hiram Abiff ritual. They go around the rough ashlar 3 times, or the ashlar, whatever their temple. Like it's all on. Here's the thing: it's all on YouTube. We know what's going on. Like, right? There's documentaries about this stuff. It's not Christian. It's actually Babylon. It's pagan. I made a video called "Freemasonry is Witchcraft." That's how strongly I feel on it. So it's like at a doctrinal, philosophical, and a doctrinal level, it is antithesis. It is in the antithesis to Christianity. Is how I feel. It's like proud, where you're supposed to be humble, or you know, it's everything bad. It's terrible. Leave Freemasonry, please, please leave Freemasonry.
All right, let's continue. Let's learn about the Whig Party, because Pike was very much involved in the Whig Party.
So a long time ago in the United States, in the year 1834, things were obviously quite different in many ways, but especially in politics. This party didn't exist, this party did exist, but it was much different than today, and it was quite a new party, having only been founded in 1828 by Andrew Jackson. But Andrew Jackson, while doing several good things, also did several bad things, and everything he did was certainly controversial. However, Jackson's approach to things was so different that there wasn't much of a unified and organized opposition. People criticized him for different reasons, and while there were groups that were so-called anti-Jacksonian, they focused on different things. But in 1834, that all changed with the formation of a unified opposition party, one that's quite a unique one in American politics, all things considered, the Whig Party. So what are the Whigs like? Well, in terms of political colors, they're light blue and buff. Yes, this shade of yellow is technically called buff. What's their mascot? They didn't really have a mascot. That idea was actually started by Andrew Jackson, so they didn't want to participate in it. Now, the real question is, are they on the...
Stop!
Cody, what are you doing here?
I know what you're going to ask. Don't do it.
But I was just going to answer if the Whigs were
Think of the comments. Don't.
Were the Whigs on the left or the right?
You maniac! You do the video!
All joking aside, the Whigs actually weren't on either the left or the right. They weren't quite centrist either. They were actually all three. How is that possible, you may ask? It's because they were known as a big tent.
Yep, they were all three. We're going to learn more about that later. He had all the parties together, you know, Democrats, Republicans at the time, which I guess would later become that, but yeah, they would all be a part of that.
Party. A big tent party means that the party has members with all sorts of different viewpoints in it. The thing that they all agreed with is that they didn't like Andrew Jackson. They also tended to support policies that were more broad yet effective. So what did they think about economics? Well, they wanted higher tariffs on foreign goods, meaning you'd have to pay more if it's not made in America. They typically supported around 25%, which is a pretty high tax, and so people would pay less for the cheaper American brand. Then any tax money they do make off the tariffs would help the government earn revenue without hurting American businesses, which encourages them to stay inside the United States. So in a weird way, they're pro-business and pro-taxation at the same time. Also at the time, land was pretty important in determining status in the business world. Clearly, if you owned a lot of land, you had the resources and likely the money to run it, so they should be considered the most important. However, according to the Whigs, that was not true. To the Whigs, skill and credit should count more than simply having inherited several dozen acres. They were also very supportive of using tax revenue to help build infrastructures across America. More specifically, they heavily supported public schooling, roads, canals, and cultural institutions. America at the time was very big, but not well connected.
Alright, I agree with all that from a policy perspective. But we're going to get to a little bit more in a minute.
Outside the original 13 colonies, so this was a way to sew the nation closer together, as they would put it. What about social policies? They were kind of like grandpas. In what sense? Well, why did they support universal education? 2 reasons. One, they wanted a well-educated populace so that the people would know the Constitution, recognize tyranny, and better help the economy. That answer makes sense. The second reason, they thought that people needed to learn manners. Yes, that's right. They wanted to also use schools to teach people about table manners, posture, politeness, and so on. They were also weirdly anti-modernization because they thought technology was scary and would help create an American aristocracy. The Whigs liked the idea of a simple American life on the farm. So yeah, Grandpa Party. What about government itself? The Whigs hated Andrew Jackson, and most thought he was tyrannical. He greatly expanded the position of the presidency's power and mocked him by calling him King Andy. But the Whigs didn't just want to keep things balanced. Most of the time, they actually wanted Congress to be the supreme branch of the 3 branches. So in a way, they're almost parliamentary. While they did have presidents, they focused more on Congress and state governorships to get things done. The Whigs were actually a successful opposition for a time, but man, they had a lot of bad luck. In 1836, they put 4 Whigs in the national ballot. Yes, 4. So naturally, that split the vote and all 4 lost to Martin Van Buren. Then next time, under William Henry Harrison, they won quite well. In fact, this election had the second highest turnout in American history at 80.2% of the electorate, only behind 1860. But then Harrison died after 31 days thanks to pneumonia. Then his vice president, John Tyler, became president. And John Tyler became one of the most hated presidents ever. Remember how I said the Whigs had a variety of opinions? Well, John Tyler had ideas that angered a lot of Whigs from his own party. Firstly, he had many rivals in Congress who also wanted to be president that he would fight with, such as Henry Clay. He was also a firm believer in manifest destiny and westward expansions, while most Whigs were not. Most Whigs thought America didn't need to expand. They wanted simple America, remember? Tyler said, screw that, we're going to keep going west anyway. Then to top it all off, tons of Whig policies in Congress he just vetoed. In fact, he was the first president to ever get a veto overturned by Congress. Eventually, his own party kicked him out, and he technically finished his term as an independent. Because his presidency was such a mess, the Whigs dubbed him his accidency. The Whigs lost the next election to James K. Polk, but then won in 1850 thanks to Zachary Taylor, a war hero from the Mexican-American War that just finished. But in another stroke of bad luck, he died after only 16 months in office. Once again, the vice president took over, and once again, it was a terrible vice president, Millard Fillmore. Honestly, the only thing most of you know about him is that he's the one who helped open trade up with Japan. He also finished the Compromise of 1850 and sadly encouraged Northern Whigs to abstain from voting so they could pass the Fugitive Slave Act. This, along with other policies, ended up splitting the Whig Party into 2 groups, the Conscious Whigs and the Cotton Whigs. Millard Fillmore's divisive policies ended the Whig Party and it split into a lot of factions. Some joined the Northern Democrats, others the Southern Democrats. Some formed the Constitutional Union Party, which only ran in 1860. The chunk that was left united with the Free Soil Party to form the new Republican Party. The Whigs disappeared.
See, that's the big thing. The conscious Whigs, the Northern Whigs, they became the Republican Party of what we, And then the Southern Whigs, which would be Albert Pike, they would become the Southern Democratic.
And never really appeared again. There have been occasional Whig Party revivals, but they've all been local and never successful. So that's the brief overview.
Oh boy,
of
look!
one of the most
Their logo was
the
Whig Party logo was an owl. Minerva free to captives. Oh boy!
So, the United States has ever had. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.
So we had to play some history there. Yes.
Now, how did the anti-Masonic, where did I think that was before the Whig, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Right. What happened? What happened, guys? You had something going. That was awesome.
It got co-opted and broken down, I believe. But
got infiltrated, most likely.
But I mean, it was. I mean, you could argue it was around. You could argue that it was around the same time. It was formed before the Whigs, like I mentioned, but it was around the same. I think if I remember, the Anti-Masonic Party was founded at the end of the 1820s, and the Whig Party was founded in the early 1830s, I think. So, but yeah, yes, Pike at first was part of the Whig Party. And then when the Northern Whigs, who became the Republicans, took a strong stance on slavery, Pike would later move on to the Know Nothing Party. Well, we'll get to that. So, in addition to editing the Arkansas Advocate, Pike secured additional work in Little Rock as a clerk in the legislature. He married Mary Ann Hamilton October 10th, 1834. The couple had 6 children. Hamilton brought considerable financial resources to their marriage, and she helped Pike purchase an interest in the Advocate from Bertrand in 1834. The next year, he became its sole proprietor. Pike studied law while editing the newspaper, ultimately passing the Arkansas bar exam in either 1836 or 1837. In the latter year, he sold the newspaper and devoted his time to the law. He demonstrated considerable legal prowess early and represented clients in courts at every level, including the United States Supreme Court, which he received permission to practice before in 1849. Pike developed a lucrative law practice, and his clients included many of the tribes in the Indian Territory. Among his clients at the time were the Creek and the Choctaw, whom he represented in a case against the United States government that secured payment for lands taken in the Treaty of Fort Jackson in 1814. Pike learned several Native American dialects while working as their attorney. An ambitious public figure, Pike joined others in 1845 in supporting actions against Mexico, which became the Mexican-American War. Pike joined the Regiment of Arkansas Mounted Volunteers, a cavalry regiment, and was commissioned as a troop commander with the rank of captain in June 1846. Pike concluded early on that the senior officers of his regiment were incompetent, and he shared his observations with the people back in Arkansas through letters to the newspapers. Following the Battle of Buena Vista, he leveled particularly harsh criticism against Lieutenant Colonel John Selden Roane. After the publication of a particularly vitriolic letter by Pike in the Arkansas Gazette, Roane demanded that Pike apologize or give him satisfaction. Roane also stated that Pike had not been at the Battle of Buena Vista, which angered Pike. Pike refused to apologize, and the two fought at a duel near Fort Smith on a sandbank at Arkansas River. In the exchange of fire, neither hit his antagonist, and the two were persuaded to halt the duel with the honored satisfied, and then went on to go eat at a banquet. So, it's very interesting that Albert Pike, you'll see it throughout his biography, out through his life history, that he himself is a very incompetent commander. And he always riles against other commanders, calling them incompetent, but time and time again, it's shown that he himself is incompetent. He's got a bit of an ego, Pike does. Very much so. Anything you want to mention?
Sounds like Alex Jones.
Bits of an ego with Pike.
Yeah.
In the years immediately following the Mexican War, Pike's concern with the developing sectional crisis brought on by the issue of slavery became apparent. He had long been a Whig, but the Whig Party repeatedly refused to address the slavery issue. The failure in Pike's anti-Catholicism led him to join the Know Nothing Party upon its creation in 1856. He attended the new party's national convention, but he found it equally reluctant to adopt a strong pro-slavery platform. He joined other Southern delegates in walking out of the convention. Pike expressed a belief in states' rights and considered secession constitutional. He philosophically supported secession, demonstrating his position in 1861 when he published a pamphlet titled State or Province, Bond or Free. Pike said the South should remain in the Union and seek equality with the North, but if the South were forced into an inferior status, she would be better out of the Union than in it. So yes, Pike owned numerous amount of slaves. So let's learn about the Know Nothing Party. I did not know much about the Know Nothing Party, but listen to them. It sounds very interesting that they seem like they had ties to secret organizations being in the shadows. So.
Hey guys, welcome to Hippies History. We got another video on tap for you today. And if you notice the new style, of actually watching Seinfeld, and we're gonna grow your brain 10 times its size. That we're like, send the blacks back. We're gonna have Chinese Exclusion Act. We're gonna have stuff against Eastern Europeans, against Hispanics, against the Muslims, against the Mexicans. So there is kind of this repeating theme in American history that usually goes away. Of Germany. So they're bringing new stuff with them. Number one, they're bringing cheap labor. They're bringing this competition for jobs. So, you know, the English guy whose family's been here for generations, maybe 2 generations, he might lose his job on the shipyards or in Boston or in New York City at a manufacturing plant. So if a political party can come along and channel that anger, that's going to be something that they're probably going to do. And you also have just kind of the pragmatic concerns that happen when you have immigration. So in the 1840s, we're going to see cities on the East Coast and in some in the Midwest, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, they're going to be exploding at the seams. And there's going to be more poverty, there's going to be more overcrowdedness, there's going to be more crime, there's going to be homelessness, there's going to be a lot more problems that people are going to be able to lay at the feet of these new immigrants, the Irish and the Germans. And the second thing that you really kind of want to understand is something called Romanism. There's a lot of people that have this fear that these Catholics are not going to be loyal to the country, that they're going to be loyal to someplace else. They're going to be loyal to the Pope. They're going to be loyal to the Vatican, to Rome. That's Romanism. So when these Irish immigrants come in, you have this guy, John Callahan, comes from Ireland, right? Wants a cheap job. He wants to send his kids to school. And then he finds out they're reading the King James Bible. How about that? The Protestant Bible. You know, so he's not going to be a big fan of that. It bumps up against his religion. So when these Catholic immigrants started complaining, especially about that issue of prayer in school, can you believe it was an issue back then? The Protestants are saying, see what you told you? They're coming here, they're changing the rules, they're trying to change our culture, and that's not a good thing. And there was that, you know, kind of cooked into the American spirit. In the 1830s, there was a Canadian lady, Maria Monk was her name, Awful Disclosure. She had written this book about some of the monasteries up in Canada, Montreal, that were kind of an expose, and probably not true, but of huge conspiracies that they were, you know, raping nuns and they were killing, you know, babies. So there definitely was a fear cooked into the American culture that, you know, Romanism, that Catholics, they had their own exterior motives. And the big conspiracy was that they were going to end up with these bishops that were appointed from Rome that were going to subvert the United States government.
Now, I would say as a Protestant, they had some valid concerns there, even though it would lead to Irish discrimination. I mean, I have Irish blood in me, mostly Scottish, but I do have some Irish. My wife has a lot of Irish in her. My mother was Catholic. So, yeah, I can understand that there's definitely some criticisms there. As a Protestant, I can see that, but the Know Nothing Party definitely pushed that forward. You got anything to say, Free to Capitalists, as I move on?
Well, on the other side of the coin is the Freemasonic, what did they call them, Romanism? Or like, what was it? What was the term?
I can't remember the exact term that you used to
there's
use.
the New World Order side of it, where all the Freemasons from other countries have a brotherhood that actually supersedes countries' borders at that point, or you know what I mean. So it's it's just like the Catholic Church, where there is a risk of that, where you could have like treason. Basically, it's like the perfect setup for treason.
Yeah, I agree.
Is it not? Right? Like ruled from what, the Grand Lodge in England or Washington, or the thing is, like, I have this problem too, right, with 9/11 is like traitors, enemies foreign and domestic. I think we should worry about domestic because we focus on, say, like England, but we're here, right? There's Masons here doing this kind of stuff. I think we should address the issue of Masonic collusion, basically. There was a video I watched. Sorry to go off on this, but there's a video. It's relevant. There's a video of UK cops and they were asked to divulge their membership to see who's a Freemason and who's not, right? Just for I forgot what reasons. Well, just why not, right? You're all part of the same thing, right? Like the Fraternal Order of Policemen, but they wouldn't do it, right? So it's like it's basically so unfair. It's the hidden hand. Like they even have names for these groups. You just read the symbols in the story. It tells the story, right?
Yeah.
But the hidden hand that's running this whole thing, I believe to be like the brotherhoods of, the hidden brotherhoods, the dark brotherhoods or whatever they call them, right? But it's like a Masonic, and at that, like I was saying, at a certain system, at a certain level, it blends with the Catholic Church. So, like say the Knights of Malta, right? It's not like the Knights of Malta are fighting the Masons or anything. You know what I'm saying?
No, not at all. All right, let's continue about the know-nothings.
And turn us into a Catholic country. Now, it's not enough just to have immigrants. You need some other context working for you as well. And politically, the context is going to be that really we're coming to the end of the second political party system. And that second one is really kind of this idea of the Whigs and the Democrats. The Whigs more of a unionist, more of a northern-based party, and the Democrats have a solid hold on the South, but they also are beginning to make inroads with these new immigrants, these political machines in the North that are creating some resistance by those Yankees who had been here before. Now, the Whig Party is eventually going to dissolve, really over the issue of slavery, because they weren't taking a firm stance on it. And especially as we get to the Kansas-Nebraska Act and some of the other events that are going to occur that are going to really drive this party and disintegrate it. And it's out of that disintegration of the Whigs that is going to give this new political party, which isn't going to be called the Know-Nothings at first, but will be the Know-Nothings, the chance of survival. So you have that going on, the immigration influx and already this fear of Romanism that is setting the stage in the 1840s for the birth of a new political party that I know nothing about. I know nothing. You want to know what? It's the Know-Nothings. Let me go get the Know-Nothings and see if we can explain the rise of the Know-Nothings. Rise up. So really, the beginnings of the Know-Nothing Party are really going to begin in 1843. We'll talk about the founder in a second, Louis Charles Levin. But he's going to begin a political party in New York and then Philadelphia called the American Republican Party. And this is a new party that's based really on the foundations of being anti-Catholic, of Romanism. Now, they have some other issues. They're actually for women's suffrage way back then. They're a little bit progressive. They kind of want regulation. They also talk about prohibition. The man who founded it was for the temperance movement, so he's going to be...
That's interesting. They're for women's suffrage and also from prohibition. You think they would be against prohibition. So it's kind of like a mixture. It's like put blender, of all these political views together. We're going to get to more of why that might be more interesting in a minute when you get to actually who the founder is and why they might be so anti-Catholic.
Against booze big time. Now, those are side issues. The main issue is going to be nativism and this anti-Catholic thing. And their political party is going to put together things like you have to be here 21 years before you can become a citizen. You can't run for office unless you were born in the United States. No foreigners are going to hold office in the United States. We're going to make sure we're bringing King James into those schools. And we're going to make sure that our culture, political, economic, social, is really going to be preserved from these immigrants who want to change everything about them. Why don't you go back where you came from? So that's really the foundations of this American Republican Party that later is going to turn into the Know-Nothings. But at least in the North, less in the South, it's built on this idea of fear of immigrants. Now, the man who founded this party, Louis Charles Levin, is actually a Southern Jew, if you can believe that.
Huh.
A little Levin?
And he hates Catholicism. Okay.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but to think that it was a Southern Jew from the South is going to end up leading this movement, a little bit ironic considering that Jews are a minority as well. He's also the first Jew who's elected to Congress. One of his big issues, now he wasn't nativistic was prohibition. He's for temperance. He wants to ban booze. And so actually in Philadelphia, he's kind of giving these anti-booze rallies, kind of these protests against liquor. And there was violence. There was actually 22 killed in 1844 in Philadelphia. They burned down St. Mike. They burned down St. Augustine. Now, this American Republican Party is really kind of a hodgepodge of different groups that are kind of coalescing around this issue. It's not a huge organization. Most of these are decentralized, meaning there's local leaders. There's not really one voice for the movement. And it was actually the Order of the Star-Spangled Banner. It was a secret club, like the Freemasons, the Illuminati, Fred Flintstone with the horns. And that's actually where the Know Nothing name came from. Horace Greenlee, who was a newspaper editor, labeled them the Know Nothings because every time he'd get one of these guys that was in this secret club and he'd say, "Tell me about your party," they go, "I don't know anything. I know nothing." So that's where the name
I know nothing. I know nothing. You get caught? I don't know anything. What does that sound like to you?
Lies. Always with the lies.
And also there were strong anti-Catholic sentiment stoked by Louis Charles Levin. And there were a lot of riots in Irish Catholic neighborhoods. And Levin stoked a lot of that. Now, granted, he did say that they were trying to burn down St. Philip Catholic Church, and he was against that. But, yeah, it's very interesting, the first Jewish politician elected to Congress started a party called the Know Nothing Party, which Albert Pike was a big part of, and they were staunchly anti-Catholic and started as a secret society.
Philanthropists with your good and good intentions in their heart.
Now everybody's going to say me and you are defenders of the Catholic Church. Frida Capitis. We're Catholic apologizers.
Mystery Babylon the Great. Mother of harlots. No. Not so. No, actually, my message, and I believe the Holy Spirit's message for the Catholic people, are come out for my people and take as many people as you can out, because that system is going to be judged by God, right? And you don't want to be there.
But yes, but I mean, if we have to choose Freemasonry over Catholics.
But we don't, so it's great.
Or if we're going to choose the
Are
we going to choose the Know Nothing Party over Catholics?
I just choose what I am right now. It's great. It's like, I don't have to be a Catholic and I don't have to be a Freemason. I'll just be saved.
Yes.
It's perfect.
So, in 1861, the Arkansas State Convention named Pike its commissioner to the Indian Territory and authorized him to negotiate the treaties with the various tribes. As a result of his experience there, the Confederate War Department appointed him as a brigadier general in the Confederate Army in August 1861 and assigned him to the Department of the Indian Territory. Pike assisted the tribes in support of the Confederacy in raising regiments. He believed that these units would be critical to protecting the territory from Union incursions. Still, his belief that the Indian units should be kept in the Indian Territory brought him into the early conflict with his superiors. In the spring of 1862, General Earl Van Dorn ordered him to bring his 2,500 Indian troops into the northwest Arkansas. Despite his opposition to the move, Pike obeyed, and his Indian force of about 900 men joined Confederate forces in northwest Arkansas. On March 7, 8th, 1862, they participated in the Battle of Pea Ridge, led by Pike. Pike proved an incompetent leader, and he failed to keep his force engaged with the enemy or in check. Charges circulated widely that the men had stopped their advance to take scalps. After the battle, Pike and his men returned to the Indian Territory. So yes, it is either Pike had no problem with the Native Americans scalping their Union enemies, or he just washed his hands and let it happen. That's dishonorable, Albert. What say you, Frida Cappers?
Remember I was trying to find that clip of the Simpsons in the beginning the opening credits, they had, I think it was Washington shaking, what was it, Napoleon's hand
Yeah.
or something. So that's kind of like what goes on, I believe, right? Like the chiefs all get together. We're going to have a war, guys. Let's have a drink first.
Yeah.
Like what?
We're gonna make some money, thin the herd, gain some power.
I got some contracts. You know, we can make some money off this, eh? Gonna make some big bucks.
Opposition to Confederate policy over the Indian Territory would continue to create conflict between Pike and his superiors. As in the previous war, Pike came into conflict with his superior officers, drafting a letter to Jefferson Davis complaining about his direct superior. Unhappy with Pike, in the summer of 1862, General Thomas C. Hinman, commander of Confederate forces in Arkansas, attempted to extend his authority over the territory. After Pea Ridge, Pike was faced with charges that his Native American troops had scalped soldiers in the field. Major General Thomas C. Hindman also charged Pike with mishandling of money and material, ordering his arrest. Both these charges were later found to be considerably lacking in evidence. Nevertheless, Pike, facing arrest, escaped into the hills of Arkansas, submitting his resignation from the Confederate States Army on July 12th, 1862.
Man, I feel bad for all these Masons get all these false accusations all day, every day.
Oh, yeah.
They've never done anything wrong is the thing. Like, obviously, you ask any Mason, they'll tell you. They've never done anything wrong. Jack the Ripper was not a Mason.
So Pike was a horrible general in the Mexican-American War, had allegations brought against him then of being dishonorable. He was a horrible general for the Confederacy, allegations brought against him of mishandling money and material and allowing or looking away of his Native American regiment that he was ordering of doing scalping. I mean, how many times has this become like how much is it going to take for people to be like, hey, yeah, Albert Pike was a good guy, to Albert Pike was just a horrible human being that was just out for himself? I mean,
right. He's a man of ill repute. He's a unsavory individual. You got it through your head, people. Like, they give us these heroes, right? Actually, the Albert Pike quote is, "We give the public their heroes," right?
yes.
So it's like he's one of these heroes to Freemasons, and it's like, get over it. Like, he's got some flowery speech, I'll give him that, but
Yes.
at a fundamental level, it's hypocrisy. You're going to exalt Lucifer over God, right? Like, forget it. You're you're of the wicked ones. You're fired. Get out of here.
Yes.
So we should topple his statue or something. Oh, wait. That's so funny we were talking about that, right? Like, what was it, a day before?
Both Lee and Jeff Petty mentioned in the chat the scalping was begun by the French. Actually, if you look into it, there were Native Americans practicing it back, like, as far back as, like, the 1300s. So, like, no, it wasn't started by the French. Now, whereas there, you know, were you know, the colonies, both English and French, also offering bounties for the heads of killed hostile Native Americans? Yes, that did happen. We practiced it too, but it did not start. You know, the Native Americans didn't get it from the French. They were doing it beforehand.
What about Operation Phoenix? It's kind of recent. They did similar.
And there were some English people even dating back far as like, even it was happening in England too. So, and pretty much, I mean, I'm not saying that the Native Americans were the only people who scalped their enemies. Many people have throughout history.
Stuff.
I'm saying
What
that
happened in Africa.
I'm saying that it's whoever does it, it's poor, it's crappy. So, and Pike, instead of saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that, either directed it or didn't care. So that's the point I was trying to get across.
Well, the mentality, like, ultimately, if you think, remember the quote we saw of Pike saying, the initiates, the Blue Lodge, are lied to about the real symbols, what it really means.
Mm-hmm.
It's for the prince adepts, or the adept princes and the sages and the wizards are the ones that are supposed to get it. So at his core, he's a liar. He lies to his own people about the symbols, right? So it's, what kind of people are these, right? Like, so like he thinks. So what I'm saying is that at his core, what he would think of people is that they're dumb, is what I'm trying to. That elite mentality, right? And Freemasonry breeds that because they exalt men's intellect, right, to the level of deification, Lucifer, right, which is a trick by Satan. You see that, like wow. Ah, man, it's just like humble yourselves. It says in the Bible, right? Like believe God instead of lean not to your own understanding, right? Like God's the one with all the wisdom. He created everything. Think about it, right? Like, so if and it's like those verses in the Bible where it says like man's wisdom versus God's wisdom, where man's wisdom is foolishness, right? Those scream Freemasonry to me, because it's like, it's actually wisdom is Sophia if you translate it, right?
Yes.
And then you go to Gnosticism, and it all like relates. If you're like, wow, right? Like when you look up the Greek word of it, and like Philema, Aleister Crowley's will. Like these are all very like simple concepts. Like basically your will over God's will, right? That's the core trick of witchcraft, of Satan. And Crowley just made a religion out of that concept, basically, right? It's all, if you understand like the fundamental of it, it's just like, wow, is that all? Like that's all it is. It's like, it's so crazy. Gnosticism.
Yes. All right, let's continue. Up. Okay. But he was arrested on November 3rd on charges of insubordination and treason and held briefly in Warren, Texas. His resignation was accepted on November 11th, and he was allowed to return to Arkansas. President Andrew Johnson pardoned him on April 23rd, 1866. At the end of the Civil War, Pike moved to New York City, then for a short time to Canada. After receiving an amnesty from President Andrew Johnson on August 30th, 1865, he had retired for a time to Arkansas and resumed law practice. In 1867, he moved to Memphis, Tennessee, and entered a new law partnership with General Charles W. Adams. He also edited the Memphis Appeal. He may have been involved in the organization of the Ku Klux Klan at this time. We're going to get more to that. Although it is not certain, he moved to Washington, D.C. in 1870. There he engaged for a time in politics, editing The Patriot, a Democratic newspaper, from 1868 to 1870. Pike also practiced law in partnership with Robert W. Johnson, former United States Senator, until 1880. Although less interested in Arkansas affairs, one of his last major roles in the state would be his support to Grant administration of Alicia Baxter's claims for governorship in 1874. Pike died on April 2nd, 1891 in Washington, D.C. at the age of 81, and was buried at Oak Hill Cemetery, even though he had left instructions for his body to be cremated. In 1944, his remains were moved to the House of the Temple, headquarters of the southern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite. Pike stated, "When I am dead, I wish my monument to be built only in the hearts and memories of my brethren of the ancient and accepted rite." So he wanted his monument to be built by Masons. The southern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite chose Italian artist Gaetano Trentino to sculpt the memorial. When members of the Grand Army of the Republic, a fraternal organization of Union veterans, became aware of plans for a public monument to be erected in Washington, D.C. in honor of a Confederate general, they contacted congressmen. They told him it would be a disgrace to the memories of all the Union soldiers. Nevertheless, on April 9th, 1898, members of Congress approved the memorial after Masons assured them that it would depict Ike as a civilian and not a soldier.
Like, didn't he just say he got charged with treason?
Yes, and he was pardoned by Andrew Johnson. Yes.
Wait a sec. So you got a statue of a traitor there? Is what you're... Oh, okay. Weird. I get it. Masons have a lot of pull, is what I'm trying to get across to people. And, like, we don't see what's going on here. It's like, how could that... Why? What? Huh?
Yeah, it's like, what?
We got to get that statue back up, John.
Right now.
I'm starting to agree with these guys. I don't know, man.
Right now.
Why not? Like, yeah.
The total cost of the memorial was $15,000, raised by members of the Supreme Council of the Southern Jurisdiction, Freemasonry. On October 23rd, 1901, the dedication ceremony was planned to coincide with the centennial anniversary of the formation of the Supreme Council, the Southern Judicial... The Supreme Council, Southern Jurisdiction, Freemasonry. At 2 p.m., members of the Grand Lodge of the Masons of the District of Columbia, led by Grand Master Harry Staniford, marched from the Masonic Temple at 9th and F Streets, northwest, to the house of the temple, where they joined thousands of Masons taking part in the parade. The parade ended at the memorial site on a triangular lot bordered by 3rd Street, D Street, and Indiana Avenue Northwest. A sizable temporary stand for invited guests and ceremony participants was built at the base of the memorial. Pike was the only Confederate military officer with an outdoor statue in Washington, D.C., and in 2019, D.C. non-voting delegate to the United States House of Representatives Eleanor Holmes Norton called for its removal. You there, Free Captus?
Yep. Sorry.
You went
Way to
blank.
go, Eleanor. Way to go, Eleanor.
Yes, and here is a picture of the Albert Pike statue, and down below it is a Greek goddess of Freemasonry. Some people say that she may be Isis. I've seen reports of that, but it is supposedly a Greek goddess of some sort of unknown. I know Isis isn't a Greek goddess, but it's either or. And then you have the double-headed eagle. So it says now this is a book of from DC Landmarks. Statue of Albert Pike, a goddess in a Greek dress, holds the banner of the Scottish Rite. The symbol of the Masonic double-headed eagle traces back to the ancient Sumerian city of Lagash. It was used by Charlemagne when he became the Holy Roman Emperor, ca. 800. It was adopted by Freemasonry in the mid-18th century. The eagle is surmounted by a Prussian crown and perched on a sword from which hangs a scroll bearing the motto, God and my right. The Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction, sponsored and paid for the statue. So, now, was Albert Pike a founder of the Ku Klux Klan, Free to Captives?
I heard he was.
My research shows that it is unknown. However, he was very sympathetic to the KKK. That, for sure, can be proven. The first iteration of the KKK that was founded by Nathaniel Bedford Forrest, because there's been 3 interactions of the Ku Klux Klan. But yes, very much so. So the author cites Albert Pike as one of the potential mystery leaders in the Klan's founding. His reasoning, however, is entirely circumstantial and inferential. He writes, General Pike, editor of the Memphis Appeal, has been identified as the Klan's attorney general and the collaborator in drawing up the ritual. The Klan precept makes no provision for this office. Pike may have well been affiliated with the Klan, however. He was intrigued by secret societies and rituals, was a leading student and interpreter of Freemasonry, and sympathized with the Klan's stated objectives. That is true. To release his here on thin ice of syllogism, formed on the misleading evidence of guilt by Masonic association. Officially, Pike and his supporters could deny that he was a member of the KKK precisely because of the KKK's deliberate distancing from the true hidden power of the KGC. Still, Fox seems to be on a far less solid ground when he writes, Pike held no sympathy with nor expressed any sentiment for the lost cause myth. Pike, even when portrayed as an authority on fraternal ritual, does fit the profile of a rabid Southern patriot. But leaving epithets like rabid aside, the evidence to the contrary is powerful. Pike is part owner and the editor-in-chief in the Memphis Daily Appeal, wrote the following editorial in April 16, 1868 edition. The disfranchised people of the South, robbed from all guarantees of the Constitution, can find no protection for property, liberty, or life except in secret association. So the KKK. not in such association to commit follies and outrages, but for mutual, peaceful, lawful self-defense. If it were in our power, it could be effected. We would unite every white man in the South who is opposed to Negro suffrage into one great order of Southern Brotherhood, which an organization complete, active, vigorous, in which a few should execute the concentrated will of all, and with very existence shall be concealed from all but its members.
Batman.
Meriwether was at least the second such denial that had been made in 2 days. In July 7th, Appeal editor Albert Pike referred to the no longer extant letter printed by the Avalanche that apparently accused the Democratic Club of attempting to supplant regular party machinery. Pike, who had been named the club's president, breezily denied the charge and described the organization in terms that sound reminiscent of the Klan prescript, which I just read. Chapters all over the state enact in concert with each other to establish ward clubs in Memphis and district clubs in Shelby County. It's also intended to procure exact information. The number of conservative radical voters in each county and the disenfranchised who cannot vote, which is attempted to make the Negro or equal. Every white man opposed to that becomes our brother. Now, the Masons like to say, well, Pike said that, you know, if the African Americans got education, then they would be equal to us, right? It's just because they had to lack the proper education. Well, yeah, he might have said that, but these other words of his say otherwise. So, yeah.
That which we may say to the crowd is, that's what is, apparently that's what the quote was. There's two doctrines. There's what they say to the initiates, and then there's what they say to the public, right? Tell us what you really think, Albert.
Within days of the Democratic Club meeting, the Klan made its first public appearance in Memphis. So right after Pike's meeting, because Pike was, part of the Democratic Club, the KKK showed up. Elizabeth Avery Meriwether wrote in her reminiscences that one evening, apparently 10 days or so after the Democratic Club assembled, her husband Minor instructed her to put out the lights in the bed early tonight. Do not go to bed before midnight if you wish to see a ghostly army. So this was straight from, interestingly enough, a Masonic page. The following authors, all influenced or sympathetic to the Dunning School, have been cited by some anti-Masonic writers as authorities for the claim that Albert Pike was the leader of the KKK. Their claims regarding Albert Pike are suspect not because of their partisan reportage, but because the partisanship allowed them to accept without question self-serving testimony without corroboration. However, and I don't have the names in front of me who wrote this book on the Klan, that this Mason tries to say, well, they're just casting shade. Well, they were an anti-KKK. They were pro-KKK. They were happy that Albert Pike had a relationship with the Ku Klux Klan. So, yeah, the Mason, again, is casting shade on something that is not correct. So, it's just complete bullcrap. And they write, General Albert Pike, who studied the Masonic Order, was the chief judicial officer of the Klan. Now, people say that this title is not a true title of the KKK, therefore Pike wasn't in the Klan. But then you have the Masons saying, well, these people were anti-Masonic because they wrote about Albert Pike being in the Klan, but these people were pro-KKK and didn't have a problem with a Mason like Pike being in the Klan, so this negates this. So do I know if Albert Pike was a founder of the Ku Klux Klan with General Nathaniel Bedford Forrest? I don't know. But I could tell you a good part, he sure as crap sympathized with the KKK and had dealings with the Ku Klux Klan. So, yeah. Would I have to say he was a founding member or a founding member of the Klan? I don't know. Likely. Would I say that he was a supporter of the Klan and probably worked with the Klan? Yes. From my research, I could clearly show that Pike was very sympathetic to the Ku Klux Klan. And, the Masons like to say he wasn't a racist. He owned slaves. He was obviously, based off of his own words, a racist. All right? Anything you want to add, Freddie Kappas?
I'm wondering if he would have, say, a root, like a Hitler or Blavatsky-style root race doctrine, right? Probably like a that same doctrine, right?
So, alright, so let's continue. Now we're going to talk about Albert Pike being a Grand Master in the Independent Order of the Odd Fellows. So let's look at the history of what the Independent Order of the Odd Fellows are.
There are many theories about how Odd Fellowship first started and received its name. The most widely accepted belief is that it emerged in England from a group of working-class men who fell outside the established system of trade guilds. These men banded together to form their own labor union. Fellows from numerous odd trades gathered together to form a fraternity so to protect and care for their members and communities. Historically, there was no welfare state, trade unions, or national health insurance. These men would work together to help each other and the unfortunate families in their community get back on their feet by aiding.
And I could see, me and Lee Veltman, shout out to Lee in the chat. Shout out, brother. We talked about this before. A lot of these organizations did start as trade unions. They did start as a way of offering, like beneficial societies, benefits to bury the dead. You could say, yeah, I can see that, but they aren't that now. I mean, on the lower levels, yeah, you're going to have a lot of camaraderie and sticking up for your fellow man. I understand that. But the high levels of, let's say, Freemasonry, for example, it's not only that. So.
I think they got speculative Freemasonry started at a certain point, and then they had the operative Masons, which were actually builders. But, like, what I think is, like, basically there's been a secret order that's gone way. It's the initiates, the Brotherhood, the Pythagoras, those kind of like that kind of secret order of. I forgot how to say it, but it goes back to if you look at the first Freemasonic Robbie Burns, I believe, his poem, it talks about Egypt, and they talk about And God specifically says in the Bible not to go to Egypt for spiritual. Obviously, with that story of the Jews in captivity in Egypt, it's a big.
I plan not going to Egypt anytime soon, and definitely not for any spiritual enlightenment. It's just me.
Mm-hmm. It says, "Woe to them that go to Egypt, and they trust in the chariots and all that." So, and like spiritually. You're actually calling upon these old gods. I've seen like, I guess an exoteric version of a Masonic Bible, and it had depictions of the old gods, like basically. So like, okay, here's your gods, right? Like they have, it's just a mess. Witchcraft. It's witchcraft. I made a video called Freemasonry is Witchcraft. Check it out.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue.
Each other in times of sickness and distress, whether it was rebuilding a barn that had burned or putting in a new crop after a devastating season. Such men became known as Odd Fellows, so named by the general population who also thought they were an odd bunch of fellows who would behave in such a seemingly impractical, altruistic, and selfless fashion. The group then adopted the name. By the 1700s, there were numerous Odd Fellow organizations in the UK. In 1810, a number of lodges in the Manchester area created the Independent Order of Odd Fellows with the title Manchester Unity. With their improved system, they were able to persuade other Odd Fellow organizations to join their unity. They also chartered the Independent Order of Odd Fellows in America, founded on April 26, 1819, by Thomas Wildey and 4 other members of the fraternity from England. The American Order then established many branches around the world. On September 20th, 1851, the Odd Fellows became the first fraternal organization to accept women when they adopted the Rebecca degree. It was also the first fraternal organization to establish homes for the elderly and for orphan children. Many lodges also built and managed cemeteries for a decent burial for the deceased. During the golden age of fraternalism, the Odd Fellows were the largest fraternal organization in the world. The World
That's interesting.
Almanac showed that it had over 3.4 million members in 1915. Although non-political and non-sectarian, and contrary to the belief that it was just a working man's organization, it also claimed many notable members, which included 6 U.S. presidents such as Franklin Roosevelt and Warren G. Harding, as well as many senators, governors, and community leaders. Lucy Hobbs Taylor, the first female American dentist, was also a member of the order. The Oddfellows and Rebeccas also played a very important part in establishing many U.S. statehoods, Texas and California among those and many others. Law and order was established by the organization in many localities. Historically, Oddfellows Lodge Halls also played the part of the community center, where people would gather and conduct community activities. In many cities, Oddfellow lodges were the first organizations of any type, and a large number of their lodges have completed their first 100 years of service. Locally, nationally, and internationally, the Oddfellows and Rebeccas are involved in various charitable causes and humanitarian endeavors. The order donates over $775 million in relief projects annually. Their educational foundation gives scholarships and low-interest student loans to qualified applicants every year since 1927. They are also regular donors to the Arthritis Foundation, Visual Eye Research Foundation, American Heart Association, and many more. Their Living Legacy program has planted more than 8 million trees worldwide. Since 1949, the United Nations Pilgrimage sponsors high school students on a 1-week trip to New York to visit the United Nations. The organization also manages more than 80 homes for the elderly and orphans, as well as several recreation camps and parks available for the whole family. They also help build and sponsor the SOS Children's Village, which houses 150 orphaned and AIDS-affected children ages 0 to 17 in Cambodia. They sponsor a float in the Rose Parade in California every year. They are the only fraternal organization permitted to conduct a pilgrimage to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and given the honor of bestowing a Grand Decoration of Chivalry Award upon an unknown soldier. They are indeed Oddfellows. Become a member now.
I would say we should have Lee Veltman on one day and do a show on the history of the Independent Order of the Oddfellows. I think it'd be good.
That'd be awesome. I haven't seen many people break it down, so...
Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea for a future episode. So Albert Pike's first exposure in the fraternal organization began when he joined the Independent Order of the Oddfellows. In the early 1840s, his leadership and oratory skills quickly made him the noble grand of his Oddfellows Lodge in Little Rock, Arkansas. By 1848, after receiving the rank of a past grand, he was initiated into the degrees of the Oddfellows encampment and eventually became a past chief patriarch. He was elected and installed as the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Arkansas of the Independent Order of the Oddfellows from 1852 to 1853. Upon becoming a past Grand Master, he served as one of the Grand Representatives to the Grand Lodge of the United States, renamed as the Sovereign Grand Lodge. They're a national governing body of the Independent Order of the Oddfellows, but he was not able to fruitfully fulfill his responsibilities because he moved to New Orleans, Louisiana. He only returned to Arkansas in 1857. While Pike was popular among Oddfellows in the southern states, his service as a Brigadier General of the Confederate States of America, his personal opinions about slavery, and the accusations that his Native American troops scalped Union Army soldiers during the American Civil War made him unpopular to Oddfellows in other jurisdictions. That's interesting. His arcane and metaphysical ideas also clashed with several high-ranking officers of the Independent Order of the Oddfellows Grand Lodge of the United States, who were permanent ministers and preachers at the time. That's very interesting, too. Such as Reverend T.J. Barrell, author of The Brotherhood, being a representation of the principles of the Odd Fellowship. Reverend I.D. Williamson, author of the Oddfellows Pocket Companion. And Reverend A.B. Grosh, author of the Oddfellows Improved Manual. Interesting. It's like the Order of the Oddfellows were kind of like a Protestant. As a result, Albert Pike, and I might be wrong about that, I'd love to look later on, but that's at least around the 1800s. It's interesting. Even though they're founded way, way before Protestantism. But Albert Pike never won an elective office within the Grand Lodge of the United States of the IOOF. Remained a member of the IOOF until his death, but his influence within Odd Fellowship was solely confined within the state of Arkansas. And then, of course, Albert Pike, 32nd degree Mason. Lucifer, the light bearer. Strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness, Lucifer, the son of the morning. It is he who bears a light, and with its splendors intolerable, blinds feeble, sensual, or selfish souls. Doubt it not. That would be from Morals and Dogma. Albert Pike, proclaiming his love for Lucifer. Thoughts, Freddie Capus?
Yeah, and it's I guess you could say Lucifer is the light bearer, right? But Jesus in the Gospel of John, it says Jesus is the true light that lights every man, and he's the light of the world, right? So there's it also says that Satan comes as an angel of light.
Yes.
Right. So that's what these guys are into.
And
there's Revelation 9:11 I want to get to as well.
Okay.
It says I'm not right in front of it, but it says it has a king. There's a king over the bottomless pit, and it's Abaddon or Apollo.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Abaddon.
And at a certain levels of masonry, I've heard that they say Apollo is their king. Right.
Revelation 9:11. They have as king over them the angel of the abyss. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek his name is Apollyon. Should be Apollo.
So even like theologically, at a certain level, it fits perfectly. Like this is the end time kingdom. It's going to be Masonic, I believe.
No, actually, interesting. Apollyon is just the Greek word for Abaddon. Huh. Okay. Interesting. So, here for Morals and Dogma, and I'm not going to read all this, but when you look into to him talking about Jesus Christ, he gives the various degrees of Gnosticism and what they talk about Jesus. You have the Marcoceans. You have the Valentinans. So you have the various flavors of Gnosticism discussed, mainly when Pike talks about Jesus. It's only in that flavor. It's not, what you get from their, the Bible or church. It's strictly from Gnosticism. It talks about the demiurge, which you would see in Gnosticism.
It's a mystical ascended masters type.
Yes.
Understanding of Jesus.
Yabadiah finding that Jesus was destroying his empire. Again, this is all when I was a Gnostic. This is all the stuff that I believed in. It was bullcrap. It was false. I still believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ, but I would be known of what was a Christian Gnostic, and I despised Albert Pike and would not read his version of it. But I thought the version I believed was correct, and it was a heresy. I admit it. So he talks about Paul from Samosa, talk about the Apostle Paul, that Jesus Christ was the son of Joseph and Mary, that the word, wisdom, or intelligence of God, the knowest of the Gnostics, had united itself with him so that he might be said to be at once a son of God and God himself.
So he's like Oprah. Or Joel Osteen.
So, yeah, pretty much, like the Manichaeans, again, Gnosticism. It's just Gnosticism.
And that's what, like, it's at the core of this new age that everybody's into, right? Like the Eastern mysticism, Western occultism, witchcraft.
Yep.
And it basically said, or basically put, which God always does, he's so succinct in his word, is it says, witchcraft is as the sin of rebellion. So just be a rebel against God and you're a witch. How's that?
And here we go, in Pike's own words. Now, he's talking about the Gnostics, but he's not rebutting them as me and Frida Captives would rebut them. So he's speaking about Adam here. Okay? And so, let's see here.
It's very cabaret.
To retain the rays of light still remaining among his eons and ever tending to escape and return by concentrating them, the Prince of Darkness, with their consent, made Adam. Huh. So that would be Yabadiah. The inversion of God. We believe God created Adam. They say Yabadiah created Adam. See?
Yeah, Satan's blinded, like darkened their minds so much that they believe good is evil and evil is good.
Whose
Woe
soul,
unto them.
exactly, whose soul was of the divine light, contributed by the eons, and his body of matter, so that he belonged to both empires, that of the light and of the darkness. To prevent the light from escaping at once, the demons forbade Adam to eat the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. So God is a demon, he's Yabadiah, but would be known the Empire of Light, that the darkness he obeyed, an angel of light, induced him to transgress and gave him the means of victory. Aha! The serpent, angel of light, Lucifer, who Pike adores, the adversary, Satan, whatever you want to call him. To Pike, God, the God of Abraham, Jesus Christ, who we believe in, freed the captives. Okay? He is the enemy to Pike. And Pike's God is Satan.
I'm kind of happy that statue's down, actually.
Yeah.
And like, knowing this stuff is what would make somebody take that statue down, though, right? Like, knowing the real whole story of it. Well, obviously, him being racist, just period. But knowing the rest of it, we should all be in agreement. Let's take that statue down, please. And now, apparently, some people want to put it back up.
So even though Pike is saying this is what the Gnostics believed, but he's not writing this in a rebuttal. He's literally presenting the information, and he would agree with it. So
he's like, these are the secrets. He's into it. It's groovy, man.
And then again, you have Kabbalah, Gnosis, Sabiism. They're going to call Adam Kadmon.
Yeah, right. That's what I was going to say.
He obeyed the angel of light, induced him to transgress, and gave him the means of victory, but the demons created Eve, who seduced him into the act of sensualism. That enfeebled him and bound him anew in the bonds of matter. This is repeated in the case of every man that lives. It's very homoerotic, Rita Captives. It's very, men go their own way.
And it's very Gnostic.
Yes, it is.
Trapped in prison planet. Dun, 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 dun,
so, yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say about Pike. I mean, we got more, but he definitely... Anybody who thinks that Pike's a Christian... no. And again, he's had a lot to do with modern Freemasonry. No one doubts that. The religion of the many must necessarily be more incorrect, that of the refined and reflective few, not so much in the essence as in its forms, not so much in the spiritual idea that lies latent at the bottom of it, as in the symbols and dogmas in which the idea is embodied. The truest religion would in many points not be comprehended by the ignorant, nor consolatory to them, nor guiding and supporting for them. The doctrines of the Bible are often not clothed in the language of strict truth, but in that which was fittest to convey to a rude and ignorant people the practical essentials of the doctrine. A perfectly pure faith, free from all extraneous admixtures, a system of noble theism and lofty morality, would find too little preparation for it in the common mind and heart to admit of prompt reception by the masses of mankind, and truth might not have reached us if it had not borrowed the wings of error, that is, from morals and dogma. Pretty much, Albert Pike is telling you, you're too stupid to comprehend the Bible. Therefore, the Bible does not hold truth. We have the truth.
Only Pike could understand the. They call it the furnishing. Just the Bible's the furnishing in the lodge. Don't you know that, brother? It's just one of the many furnishings. Like the Bible is just a piece of furniture to them. No, but they'll twist the Bible. Man, I've never seen so much Bible twisting as the like I'd say a Manly P. Hall. Or like any of their philosophers. I've never seen such, other than maybe like Islam. I mean, the Quran is some terrible twisting in there as well. But I mean, like in Freemasonry, it's like these guys just go off on like, you've seen Zeitgeist. That's all based in like Masonic ideal or concepts, basically, right? It's no bueno. It's wrong. It's not good.
Yeah.
Meep. Meep, meep. I can't say more about how much I agree, or I mean disagree with Masonic theology. Like,
Me too.
the more I read it, the more I'm like, why are these people doing this? And it's just like I know why now, right?
It's because even when I was a Gnostic Christian, I still
Mind-boggling.
despised Pike and Blavatsky, and I was arrogant and thought, well, they just had it wrong. Well, no. They were telling the truth.
Just
and I was wrong.
Side, right?
But I admit that.
Yeah. They're the baddies, and man, Crowley would even say, like, I want to sit at the right hand of Satan. I want to be the chief. I want to be the chief devil. Like, these guys went for it, and all people do is try to apologize for them all day, right? It's like, no, man, they went for it. They're saying Lucifer is God. The world is mine. Forget heaven. That's basically what they're doing, right? So it's like, well, why would you apologize for them? They make their choice. A man reaps what he sows. They get their reward down here. What's it to you? Why are people making like apologies for other men like this? This is not a good man.
Yeah. Pike was 41 years old when he applied for admission into the Western Star Lodge No. 2 in Little Rock, Arkansas. In 1850, active in the Grand Lodge of Arkansas, Pike took the 10 degrees of the York Rite from 1850 to 1853. He received the 29 degrees of the Scottish Rite in March 1853 from Albert Galatian Mackey, or Gallatin Mackey. In Charleston, South Carolina, the Scottish Rite has been introduced to the United States in 1783. Charleston was the location of the first Supreme Council, which governed the Scottish Rite in the United States, until its Northern Supreme Council, which established New York City. In 1813, the boundary between southern and northern jurisdictions still recognized today was firmly established in 1828. Mackey invited Pike to join the Supreme Council for the southern jurisdiction in 1858 in Charleston. He became the Grand Commander of the Supreme Council in the following year. Pike held that office until his death after borrowing money from the necessary living expenses from the Supreme Council before the Council voted him an annuity in 1879 of $1,200 a year for the remainder of his life.
Yeah. I dig it.
I was taking money from the Masons, though. But, of course, Albert Mikey wrote a lot of books about Freemasonry. He's a very famous Freemason, too. It's very interesting. He was the one who Pike received the degrees from. So, he wrote the Encyclopedia on Freemasonry. Mackey did.
Right, Mackey, yeah.
All right. Realizing that a revision of the ritual was necessary if Scottish Rite Freemasonry were to survive, Mackey encouraged Pike to revise the ritual to produce a standard ritual for use in all states in the southern jurisdiction. Ha! Uh-huh. So, yeah. Revision began in 1855, and after some changes, the Supreme Council endorsed Pike's revision in 1861. Minor changes were made in 2 degrees in 1873 after the York Rite bodies in Missouri objected that the 29th and 30th degrees revealed secrets of the York Rite. Pike is best known for his major work, Morals and Dogma, the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, published in 1871. Morals and Dogma should not be confused with Pike's revision of the Scottish Rite ritual. They are separate works. Walter Lee Brown writes that Pike intended Morals and Dogma to be a supplement and create a great connected system of moral, religious, and philosophical instruction that he had developed in the revision of the Scottish ritual. Morals and Dogma was traditionally given to the candidate upon his receipt of the 4th degree in the Scottish Rite. This practice was stopped in 1974 when I went more hidden. So yeah, if you are part of the Southern jurisdiction or the Scottish Rite of America, within America, when you take your rituals, they were done by Albert Pike. But nah, man, the Masons, they good. They're good. So.
Didn't do nothing.
And that was straight from Masonic websites, by the way. So, this website down here. Well-known Masonic author and composer of the ritual for the Concordant Body, the Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdiction. He was elected to Southern Grand Commander of the body in 1859, an office he held until his death. So look at all those lodges he was a part of. Now, this comes straight from Michael Joseph. I hope you didn't, mind me borrowing this slide from your member section that you had done. Michael. Definitely go subscribe. I am a member of Michael Joseph's. He definitely hours upon hours of research. Definitely worth the $9 or $8 a month. Thumbs up. Michael's going to be on Tuesday. A Tale of Two Pikes, WPA Guide to Arkansas, page 338. After Albert Pike, explorer, newspaperman, poet general, and Indian commissioner of the Confederacy, had led troops from the Five Nations in the Battle of Pea Ridge, he quarreled with his superiors, lashing the Arkansas military leaders in a letter to the Confederate Congress. Okay, we already read about that. His movements, therefore, until the close of the war are obscure, but considerable evidence indicates that toward the end of 1862, he retired to the wild and beautiful spot on the Little Missouri River. One account describes him as arriving in a magnificent style in a buggy drawn by white horses, followed by a wagon loaded with furniture and gold, and a procession of 200 slaves. It's about 40-odd slaves. He'd built a house, according to old settlers, and commenced the major work of his life, the writing of the philosopher of Freemasonry. His labors were interrupted after several months by a band of guerrillas, and as Michael put, who were these guys? That drove him from his home, destroyed his belongings, and threw his excellent library into the river. At the conclusion of the war, he reappeared a little, walked for a time, moved to Memphis, and eventually completed his Masonic writings in Washington, D.C. From Richard M. Dorson, American Folklore, page 100. The tenacious and secretive witch lore pervading the Ozarks involves spells and poppets, the initiation of witches through orgastic rites, and the preparation of counterspells by witch masters. In his unprintable collections, Randolph reveals lascivious traditions about the 19th century Arkansas poet, editor, and public figure Albert Pike, conveniating with the devil. The virile Pike sat on a throne in the woods while naked women danced about in wild orgies. The naked women were all witches, a Confederate veteran told Randolph, and some of them were the wives of Pike's best friends. Band of guerrillas? Orgies. Were they upset because witchcraft was going on and he was having sexual relations with some of those women were some of the friends from the guerrillas? Is that what happened? Would you say that's what happened, Free the Captives?
Nothing to see here. Everything's fine. This stuff doesn't actually happen. It's all in your mind.
So, yeah.
Probably it's like it was just a meme that got out of control. Never happened. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So now we have the 30 World War letter that everybody likes to read and discuss. Well, it is a fraud. So, I'm going to summarize that. I'm not going to be able to read all of this. We'll be here, but I'll definitely put the links in the show notes for you guys to read it. But I tried my best. I mean, I've spent hours. Now, this was separate from this a slideshow that me and Free the Captives put together. I have been researching to determine if this letter is real or fake for hours upon hours upon hours. And I've come to the same conclusion that these people have, and that it is a forgery. And it does not mean that what was talked about in the letter didn't come true, and there's not some truth within the letter, just like you have with the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, just like you have with secret weapons for quiet wars, or silent weapons for quiet wars, should I say.
Whoever wrote it had some insight.
Yes, they did. And so there's two parts of that letter supposedly written by Giuseppe Mazzini to Albert Pike, and neither letter existed. So you have the one letter, which we're going to discuss, that many people bring up as a false quote of Pike's, that Pike pretty much, talks about God and Lucifer. That is false, forgery. And the 3 World Wars letter is, they lump it together as being part of this letter, but that's actually a even further invention that I believe was brought forth by William Guy Carr. So, who wrote that letter? Possibly William Guy Carr, the 3 World Wars letter. He admits later that it was found out to be a forgery in another book. We'll get to that. So maybe he didn't write it, maybe it was given to him. Now remember, William Guy Carr, he's much like Bill Cooper. He was part of Navy intelligence for the Royal Canadian Navy during World War One and World War Two. And then he goes on, writing many books on conspiracy, as early as the 1930s. And I want to do more research on William Guy Carr. And,
even Canadian intelligence, I'd love to hear more about,
yeah, and actually, William Guy Carr, funny enough, and again, there's some truth in this, is just like he did the three world letter, World War letter, okay? It's also where we moderately get the Jewish World Revolutionary Movement, aka the Synagogue of Satan, from a modern conspiratorial term, started with Carr. So it's just really interesting.
Who are they saying that are the Synagogue of Satan?
Depends on who you ask. Like,
well, that's what I'm saying, right? Like, I'd say it's like, well, it's somebody who would have to claim they're Jews.
Well, it's interesting that Carr. Well, the thing is Carr says the Synagogue of Satan is not Jewish. Which
well, think
definitely
about it, like,
see
say
that,
how the church, the monarchy they say they're Jews.
Yes, that's exactly what Carr says. But where we get that modern day conspiracy angle of that, of Sabbatine and Frankists and everything, that stems from Carr too. Not to say that there isn't truth in there. There is truth in there. I'm just saying it's very interesting that you have the false Three Worlds letters being put forth by Carr, and then you have Synagogue of Satan being put forth by Carr in his other book. So, I don't know. It's just interesting. It needs more fleshing out.
Yeah, we'll get to down to the bottom. The questions have been asked now, so we'll figure this out.
So, so when you trace back, even Carr admits that the keepers of the manuscripts racially informed the author. Now, this was in his book about the Synagogue of Satan, Satan Prince of the World, okay? The keeper of manuscripts racially informed the author that this letter is not cataloged in the British Museum Library. It seems strange that a man, Cardinal Rodriguez Knowledge, should have said it was in 1925. So even William Guy Carr later admits it's a forgery. But no one ever, I guess no one ever admit, no, everybody's read this, no one's ever read this.
Yeah, it's important to, like, because there's just as equally damning authentic stuff that we're not focusing on, and we're quoting all this apparently shoddy research, right? So we've got to be very careful of that and try to get the best sources that we can.
And I'm going to do my best to read both of William Guy Carr's books. I want to, so I'm going to listen to Pawns in the Game and Satan Prince of this World. I want to read both of them and do a show on William Guy Carr eventually as the precursor to Bill Cooper, in my opinion. Free Captives, if you're down with that.
Sure.
And there's a lot of things that William Guy Carr talks about that I definitely agree with. I'm not trying to discredit the man. I'm just saying him being naval intelligence, just like Bill Cooper, there's a lot of things with Bill Cooper that I agree with. They both came from military intelligence. You got to raise an eyebrow to some of that. Am I wrong? So.
Right. And it's like, it's almost like I have a lot to say about Cooper anyway. I don't want to get into it right now.
But and then you have even before then, Edith Starr Miller, in her book Occult Theocracy, mentions the letters between Mazzini and Pike that supposedly existed, but nowhere in this book does she make any reference to the purported letter outlining a scenario for 3 world wars. If she'd done so at that point, it may have proved beyond a shadow of doubt that such a letter existed. Yeah, again, okay, so you have the letter that was written to Mazzini that gives the quote. Let me see if I can find it.
We shall unleash the atheists and the nihilists and provoke a social cataclysm.
Here we go. If Lucifer were not God, would Adani...
Oh, that one.
No, is that out of Morals and Dogma? Hold on, I gotta find it. But in the letter, in the letter, it's blatant that, it's more overt that Pike is a Luciferian. All right, and so you have the part of the letter where he's talking to Mazzini about being a Mason and how it's the same as being a Luciferian. All right, and what his personal beliefs are that Lucifer is God. And then you have the other part of the letter, which is the conspiratorial sign that talks about the 3 world wars. Okay. Again, why did if Edith Starr Miller knew about that letter, and why wouldn't you could argue, well, maybe she didn't have both parts of the letter or whatever. It's just too many. There's too many things around this. It's easy. I want it to be true. It would make our job a lot more easier, Freedom Captives, if this was a real letter and it wasn't.
Well, I say scrap it. There's other damning stuff he said. Why dwell on something that we don't know is 100% legit, right? There's tons of other stuff that these people have written that show their true colors, right?
Yeah, Mazzini obviously, again, here's more research. There's a lot of research has been done that shows, there's even differences. There's even differences in the way the letter has been published. I don't know. I've seen enough research and I've read enough research, and I will put it in. You can make the decision for yourself, all right? If anybody could show me something to the contrary outside with conspiracy theorists just quoting the letter, if someone can show me proof that the letter's legit, I'll change my opinion. I have just seen too much to the contrary that it cannot be substantiated. So, I don't, And it's all started with me trying to track it down anyway in the first place, was because the guy who wrote Caesar's Messiah, Joe Atwill, who I think is a fraud, who did completely shoddy research on, Josephus, okay? His grand conspiracy that the World War I and World War II were primarily done by Masonry, and you and I would both agree Masonry definitely had some involvement in it. Mm-hmm. He uses the basis of his argument on this 3 World Wars letter.
Oh, really? Yeah, I remember I looked into this a long time ago, and I basically was like, I heard it wasn't found. I found the same stuff, same conclusion as you, that it's inconclusive. Right? So it's like, why bother spending so much effort in that when there's other documentation, is what I'm trying to say. It's almost like it's a red herring, right?
Yeah. Yeah, why are you going to sit here and, be like, well...
We got to prove this one's right. It's like, who cares about that one? He says it in other places. He says it in Morals and Dogma. He incriminates himself in that. So
yes, very much so.
You don't need the 3 World Wars letter. It just augments it so perfectly that it seems like it's legit. Right?
Usually, when something seems too good to be true,
yeah, right,
it usually isn't. So. I mean, if anybody can show me evidence to the contrary, if anybody can dig up the original letter or references to the original letter...
Either way, it really doesn't change much, right? Because it would, show that they're way ahead of the game in world politics, and but that we can see that from, like, say,
and
Crowley's writings.
I'm not saying that the letter in itself. You're not listening to me. You're so convinced that this letter has to be true. Albert Pike had to write it to Mazzini. Has to be true.
No, I know it could be totally false.
He's like, well, you look at the world and see that it became true. I'm not saying that someone in the know didn't write it or someone couldn't. You're not listening to me. But it doesn't mean that the letter was written by Albert Pike.
Right,
Jeez.
Right. Gotcha. Gotcha.
I mentioned silent weapons for quiet wars. That was good evidence that was written by someone else, and it wasn't, from the CIA. That they had good evidence that it was I have to look it up. It was some, anarchist that wrote it. And Bill Cooper knew that. But no, look, there's a lot of truth to silent weapons for quiet wars. I'm not saying there isn't. But it doesn't mean that it came directly, it was found in an IBM copier at a surplus cell,
Yeah, I don't know why, what would have possessed Cooper to do a couple of things he's done, like the fake UFO, the Olympics UFO thing. Have you seen that clip?
Yeah.
Where he says it's a real UFO. It's like, come on, man. Like, what would possess you to do that? Obviously, it's just to have controversy in book sales or whatever it is. That it's like the conspiracy LARP. So he was playing the game for a couple times anyway. He knew that William Greer didn't turn around and shoot JFK because there was better footage of it. I heard a conversation of him getting confronted about it, and he just laughed it off. It was like, well, dude, this stuff matters, right? What?
Again, Aeon, it's not that I don't believe that the letter is real. I'm just saying Albert Pike did not write it. There's not enough proof for me to say that.
Right.
What part? Why can't you understand that? I'm not saying that that whoever wrote those words didn't know that those were going to come to fruition. I'm not saying that. I'm saying attributing it to Albert Pike is incorrect. Unless someone can show me evidence otherwise.
Somebody wrote it.
Yes, I'd like to know who wrote it. That's what I'm saying.
It's like, hey, wow, that's a good prediction. Hey, who is this guy? He should be the leader, the grand sovereign general of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. If he's that smart.
But is there anything you want to close on Albert Pike, who you and I are both not fans of in the slightest bit at all? I think Albert Pike was a racist. I think Albert Pike was a Satanist. And I think Albert Pike was an all-around narcissist and a horrible human being.
Mm-hmm. And it's, again, I'll just go back to the wisdom of man, right? And Sophia and Gnosticism. It's all built into Freemasonry, right? So it's not Christian. That's all I'll have to say about it. So, if you're in Freemasonry, you got to choose Christ or Freemasonry, because it's not Christian. It's Gnostic at its core. It's exalting man over God. Because man is number one in Freemasonry, not God.
Yes. Yeah. And as far as the statue is concerned, at this point, let it stay down. Let it stay down.
Bye.
But all right, Freddy Captors, is that it?
That's it. That was a good show, bro.
Think anything else?
Good info.
Anything else you want to discuss real quick before we get out of here about Albert Pike?
I'm sure we'll, if we're missing anything, we'll pick it up in the next show. Let us know in the chat. Let us know in the comments what you want to, any questions you guys got or whatever. Thanks for coming, everybody. Yeehaw.
Yes. All right, Free Captains, talk to you later, brother. Bye.
All right, God bless.
God bless you, everybody. Until next time, take care. Trust in the Lord. We will close with a song that Albert Pike wrote. Dixie to arms!
Oh, I wish I was in the land of cotton. Old times there are not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. In Dixieland where I was born in early on one frosty morning. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. I wish I was in Dixie, hooray, hooray. In Dixieland, I'll take my stand to live and die in Dixie. Away, away, away down south in Dixie. Away, away, away down south in Dixie. Oh, Southerns, hear your country call you up, lest worse than death befall you. To arms, to arms, to arms in Dixie. Oh, fear no danger, shun no labor, lift up rifle, pike, and saber. To arms, to arms, to arms in Dixie. Advance the flag of Dixie, hooray, hooray. For Dixieland we'll take our stand to live and die for Dixie. To arms, and conquer peace for Dixie. To arms, and conquer peace for Dixie. So send the North your fierce defiance, stomp to death their cursed alliance. To arms, to arms, to arms in Dixie. Advance the flag of Dixie, hooray, hooray. For Dixieland we'll take our stand to live and die for Dixie.